Hello, guys. Welcome to the brand new episode of the Film Angle. My name is Chris.
And I'm Alex.
And we got a really, I apologize for a strange episode today.
Strange. I think you mean unique. I think you mean there is no other
Straight up
podcast.
bizarre.
There's no other podcast doing it like we are right now, Chris.
Yeah. I
this
think
this is a double bill to end all double bills.
It is, yeah. I think we should just address the elephant in the room right away. We are both going to review a big Disney movie that just came out that is, made for kids and kind of a happy experience versus probably the most miserable and the longest film I've ever seen in my life.
The most miserable. Yeah, so, contrary to our episode a couple of weeks ago where we both said we were pretty much getting fed up of the Disney remakes, we are reviewing The Little Mermaid after both seeing it in cinemas. And then, obviously, the kind of 7-hour epic that we've been teasing for a little while now, the Hungarian film Sátántangó, because we have been calling it Sátántangó, but we think it's Sátántangó.
There's accents in the A's in that name, and that's what made me think it was Sátántangó. But after seeing other people, their essays and their video essays online, it seems to be Sátántangó, which would make more sense.
I would like to pinpoint the week where we kind of realized that film was part of the BFI, because I think we have been talking it up for so many weeks. This is
like 15 episodes ago or something.
Yeah, we've been intrigued and dreading it probably for a little while. So it's good that to finally tick it off our list. And I'm looking forward to actually getting into it with you and finding out your thoughts on what is probably the longest film I've ever seen. Actually, I say probably. I know it's the longest film I've ever seen.
And perhaps maybe that dread was both unwarranted and warranted. I think it's still the movie that I was expecting I was going to go see, in terms of its pacing and everything. We'll get much more into that later on. But yeah, The Little Mermaid kind of unexpectedly, in terms of Disney remakes and how unpopular they've been in the last couple of years, a massive hit, the biggest movie in the world at the minute. Seems to be smashed its domestic box office in the United States on its first weekend. I think $112 million in the first weekend, which is pretty insane for a movie like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's not much else to watch right now. That being said, we're recording this before Across the Spider-Verse releases, so that'll probably be next week's episode.
Yeah, definitely will be.
And it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And then there's a bunch of stuff coming out in June. So The Little Mermaid's got the head start really on the kind of main summer month of big blockbuster films. Be interesting to see if it dips a little bit when Spider-Man comes out, and then subsequently The Flash. Not sure how well The Flash is going to do, despite the kind of heaps of praise it's getting right now. But I did read today, though, that The Little Mermaid is performing weaker than they thought in the international market, and in the domestic US market is where it's probably going to recoup most of its money.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense for reasons that we might probably want to navigate around. Especially, in the Asian market, these types of movies and also the sort of the political undertones that are thrusted upon this movie, not created by the movie, I must say, really impact its international box office for sure. But that's something that was kind of predictable.
Yeah, the big, obviously, I struggle to say controversy because it really isn't. And when you watch the film,
there's nothing controversial about this film. No.
The casting of Ariel, Halle Bailey is an African-American actress. Obviously, in the animated film, it's played by an animated mermaid. Some people are kind of delusional as to why she's no longer animated.
I think it's almost like a fault. I don't know who coined the phrase remake. Because that is such a charged word, and that comes with expectation. Whenever you say the word remake, well, then you're expecting a like for like live action copy of the original. And then,
Yeah,
as opposed to, we should really be calling these things adaptations if we're going to be, a bit more fair to these things. And I think that's it.
definitely.
I mean, it's, Little Mermaid is an age old tale by Hans Christian Andersen that existed, 100 odd years before the Little Mermaid ever was created, conjured up by Disney. Why are we so
Yeah,
fixated on something like this?
yeah.
So yeah, it definitely it bemuses me why people are completely flummoxed by casting choices or that. Fair enough. Let's do something different. I'm interested by that, and
Yeah.
um and all those people I think are proved wrong. If I'm going to say anything positive about this movie, is that the performances aren't wrong here. I think the performances in general are pretty good. I think Halle Bailey is really like radiant in the role. I think
Mm.
she really embodies the naive, wide-eyed princess that is, that retro nostalgia that we have for those sort of older Disney movies. I think she is a really good modern embodiment of that.
Yeah, I also, what I got when I was watching it, was it did feel like we were watching two stars being born, essentially. Like, I believe that your main two roles here, Ariel with Halle Bailey
And
and
Scuttle, yeah,
Prince Eric. No, not Scuttle. Prince Eric as who's played by Jonah Howard King. I've never heard of Jonah Howard King before. Obviously, we heard
same.
all about Halle Bailey. I hadn't seen her in anything. One of her first acting roles, I think. Here, I think she is more known as a musician than
Mm.
an actress. Though I've seen some trailers. There's some future stuff coming with her. But honestly, I thought that both of them were really, really good in these roles. And I did think like, oh, I think we're watching some future stars being born here. To get into the plot, just briefly, for anybody who didn't grow up with Disney films, or maybe this is their first instance, we follow Ariel, who's a mermaid, who is kind of bewildered or completely intrigued by the human world, and makes a deal with a sea witch, Ursula,
Hmm.
to basically become human. There's a bit of a ticking time bomb to it, and in doing so, she wants to become human because she's already kind of met Eric, the prince.
Yeah, she's fascinated by the human world and what's outside of her garden, as
Yeah,
and she's bored of the mundane. There's not a lot of substance to the reason why she
no,
feels this way. It's the classic I want story.
yeah, grass is greener on the other side. But yeah, in losing her tail and gaining her legs, the kind of catch-22 is she also loses her voice and has to navigate the world without a voice, and kiss the prince before midnight in order to stay in her current form, or become I don't know. It's never really understood what Ursula kind of does with Ariel when she
Well, yeah, I mean,
enslaves her forever or something. But I don't know. There's not really much magicness to that. It's kind of like, yeah, you're mine now. So, okay.
yeah, I mean, how familiar are you with the original animated 1988 version?
This is the thing with like these Disney remakes, and it's very much how I went into Beauty and the Beast. Some of them I watched a lot of, some of them I only watched a few times. I've not seen The Little Mermaid in a very, very long time, to the point where I was like, I don't remember. I like vaguely remember things, but after coming out the cinema, I was like speaking to M, and I was saying like, so does Ursula do the big like kaiju thing at the end in the anime? And she was like, yeah, yeah. I was like, okay, I can't remember that. And I was like,
Yeah,
was there a bird? Was there a bird called Scuttle? She was like, yeah. I was like, I don't remember the bird. I remember the
but
crab.
yeah. The bird. It's a different species of bird in this, though. I think in the animated film, it's a seagull, but
Yeah, Em was
yeah.
saying that. Yeah, but I did think like there was a kind of Shakespearean quality to this, and
Oh
you
my
said
god,
about
man, you love this.
you said about the adaptation earlier, and I did think like there was definitely some Shakespearean quality to the kind of things going on. Um, because me and Chris are trying our hardest not to speak to each other about how we feel about these films, I have been teasing Chris with little hints that I absolutely loved The Little Mermaid. Chris, I did not love it, but I did actually quite like it. I didn't hate
Okay.
it. I didn't hate it at all. And I think that surprised me more than anyone, because I really went off on Disney remakes. a couple of weeks ago. That being said, sometimes I come out of these things feeling that way because it is like there's a reason these stories endure the test of time. But like, I've come out of most Disney remakes going, that was fine, and then later down the line, I'm like, I still hate the fact that they do them. Is there a reason for this to exist? I'm not really sure. I still don't think this is, the future of cinema or anything like that. But I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked it. It's not a perfect film by any means, but I had fun with it.
Okay. Yeah. There are some positives for this film. I mentioned the I mentioned the performances. I really like the way that you took a spotlight to mention the role of Eric, and that is something that I really like in this movie. I think that's been really, if you're really familiar, like I am, with the original film, which I actually think the original 1988 version is probably one of the greatest animated films ever made, not just Disney films ever made. So you've got such a strong legacy here, and you're contending with that constantly because, for the most part, it does beat for beat, kind of similar to Favreau's Lion King, follow the beats and even the line readings of the original film. But what they do here that's interesting and new, because there is an extra about 45 to 50 minutes of film here. Yeah, which was worrying to begin with. But it turns out that stuff that doesn't rely on its legacy is the best stuff in the film. The stuff where Eric had sort of no autonomy or sort of real character in the original film. He was sort of just the prize, or the symbol of Ariel's longing. Here he's a fully fledged character with his own wants and desires and hesitations, and he's played really, really sweetly here. He was the actor's name again? Apologies.
Jonah Hauer-King, and I was just having a quick look at his IMDb, but he's not really been in anything I've seen. So this is very much my first time seeing him, but he did captivate me. I thought he was very, very good.
Yeah, I think King and Bailey, they have really, really great chemistry on screen. I think
there's a lot of speculation at the moment that
oh, really?
It goes more than just actor-actress chemistry. I've been seeing a few people online speculating, but yeah, I mean, maybe
it comes free on the screen if that is. I think
that's a testament maybe to the chemistry, definitely.
Yeah, so that stuff's really, really cool. I mean, I really like whenever there's a scene at the marketplace that I really, really appreciated, where he's sort of showing her the town, and there's just, we get a real kind of insight and a little bit of breathing space for both of these characters to really get along. We have this scene where Eric is showing her all his trinkets and memorabilia that he's collected through the years, and that's a really cool scene that gets us to know him a little bit better, fleshes him out. It just, I don't know. I just think this is everything else. Everything else in this movie just really like it was. I just find the whole thing. It's a Rob Marshall movie, and I although I kind of appreciated some of his earlier work, I think the guy, I don't know. I'm allergic to some of his direction. I think he can't help but make a movie look really ugly and murky for the most part. I mean, the stuff underwater, is just kind of dull and uninteresting, and I understand there's limitations, and they make a really, really hard job to shoot underwater scenes and make them interesting, but they just did not work for me here. I think I was always just seeing a subpar, less come to life version than the animated version, which is completely the opposite of what that should be.
No, I completely agree, and especially with the underwater stuff, like the limitations really are glaringly obvious, especially in the opening. I feel like it gets better as it goes for some reason.
Maybe you just get used to it.
Yeah, maybe get used to it. But there's some really dodgy CGI at the start. There's no doubt, and it looks very Aquaman-y. But Aquaman almost got away with it because Aquaman itself was so silly and goofy.
It was so self-winking that you kind of denied it. Yeah,
and the sincerity of this of the underwater scenes here doesn't really work. But there's some really. I think that's the thing. Like, there's a semi-decent film under all this, but some of the decisions, and I know we've all been talking about it from the trailers, but yeah, man, like the lighting in this, any scene that's not in pure daylight is so difficult to see. It's got like this kind of murkiness to it. And when I first started watching, the opening scenes where it's murky underwater, I was like, oh, okay, the CGI is not great, so maybe they're trying to hide some of the seams.
Mm.
But then you go to the outside world, the real world.
Yeah.
It's all the real world. I don't know, and it's still that kind of
There's always an
that dark
artificiality there.
lighting that just doesn't. Yeah, it's like what am I looking at right now? I think I would have really struggled to watch this on my home TV.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I didn't go begin for the IMAX 3D experience. I think that would have been a pretty hard slog. But I think it's disappointing because what I love about this movie at the very beginning is the opening shots of you get these wild slow-mo shots of these colossal waves and these beautiful formations, and there's something really like mystifying about the sea, and it kind of brings you into the movie a little bit. And then when it's just undercut by that hard transition into, sea turtles kind of like circling each other and very contrived movements and everything. It's strange. It lends itself because there's a certain silliness to the material. In a way, there is, because it's so sincere that it almost has like a cringy quality to it when it's in live action form. Where in an animation, these I want songs, these really like the character of Ursula herself. Although I think McCarthy does a really good job here. I think it's kind of a really good nod to Pat. I think she does a really, really good job here. But I
Yeah,
think
I wouldn't say she made the role her own though, because it is a
no.
straight up.
I mean, we almost get a little bit of a Melissa McCarthy moment whenever there's a comedic exchange between her and Ariel. That's that comes out of nowhere. And okay, and it's kind of funny, but like, I didn't know we were doing this up until now, and then we're
Like
not going to do it ever again.
She's like almost too perfect for the part because they've got the design down, they've got the voice down, or she's got the voice down.
Yeah,
but
vocals are really good.
Yeah, it's kind of like you are just the animated Ursula. And I guess that's good for some, but I feel like you said, like Eric gets a bit more room to breathe. Ariel's, from what I remember of the animated film, she feels a little bit different here. Like there's a bit more going on here. Like Hallie brings more to the role potentially.
Potentially,
it's going off of my like vague. It's going off of my vague feelings for the Little Mermaid animated film, but I didn't feel like, oh, I remember exactly this from my youth. Whereas when I was watching Melissa McCarthy as Ursula, I was like, oh yeah, that's exact. I remember that exactly.
I think Javier Bardem, as much as I love him, is left out to dry a little bit here. No, that's a terrible pun, not intended at all.
that bit where he at the very end where he's just like hanging out in the sea as they row past him, and everybody's like, oh, he's like, hello.
Yeah, it's like that is so funny that you mentioned that, because that is the exact thing. The first thing that Lauren and I mentioned to each other on the way home was, and we looked at each other in the screen without helping and just kind of burst out giggling to ourselves, because it comes out of nowhere. They're in the towards the end of the movie. It's like, I don't know, I have a couple of characters having a conversation together. I think it's Ariel and Eric, and then the camera just quick like smash cuts to Triton just hovering above the water listening to their conversation. It's hilarious. I think the ending is the sincerity is a little treacly whenever it emulates the animated film as well, when everybody is waving the two lovers away at the end, and it comes off really, really it comes off a bit here, doesn't it? I think it was, we were giggling at the end of it, and I didn't want to do that. And I love it. Just in this format and the way it's shot and the way it's done, it comes across as a little bit silly.
It wraps up a little too fast, and maybe that's just the the animated film did this. But like to go, the chemistry.
The animated film is constructed.
But to go from him almost marrying someone else to being like, oh no, actually it's you, and I know he was under a spell. But then, you smash cut from the climactic battle to them getting married, them heading off, and everybody's happy and peaceful again. And that is a fairy tale at the end of the day, but it wraps up a little too fast and a little too neatly.
Yeah, Lauren had a really good thought actually. She said that if we do something like interesting with Little Mermaid again, if we're obsessed with this story that we keep retelling, it's very reminiscent to her about with Pinocchio. And it would be really interesting to see somebody like Del Toro take on the Little Mermaid because its origin story is as well very dark. I think the mermaid, the famous line in the book is that she turns into sea foam, and it's a very dark
Mm,
ending for the mermaid, and it's the origins of that story. The Disneyfication. It's so far removed from what it originally was. It'd be really
yeah.
interesting to go back to that route sometimes and sometime and explore that. I'd like to see
Yeah,
it
I
story
did
that way.
see some people. I wish I could credit them, but I just saw it randomly on Twitter today. I don't even know if I liked it or anything like that to go back and find. But they had put images of the film or clips from the film together with excerpts from the original fairy tale, and kind of explaining the fact that Rob Marshall actually did go back to the roots of the book a bit more with certain elements. Um,
Yes. Well, he opens up with a Hans Christian Andersen quote from
yeah,
the book, which I feel like had no impact on his vision or direction. It kind of was just a quote that was kind of plucked
yeah,
from the book
it's
and put on the
interesting
screen.
though. Like the clips they used, the one that stood out to me was where she first comes up to the surface and witnesses the fireworks, and then jumps on the boat and stuff like that.
A
That
good
was,
scene,
yeah, I was
actually.
about to say that was one of my favorite scenes. I thought it was
Well,
done really well.
that looked good. That as well.
Yeah, it looked
Yeah.
like they were in water, and then do you know what they probably were because it's that surface,
Yeah.
bobbing around on the surface kind of thing. Yeah, yeah, I like that.
Especially
I
when
thought,
Bailey's in the water and
mm,
I think she's rescuing Eric, and we
yeah,
see the fire reflections off the water in her face. It looks
yeah,
realistic. It looks almost like a Cameron production for that brief moment. So
yeah. I'll
yeah.
I'll join you on some criticisms, unless you're about to go somewhere else. Let me know.
No, no, please support
No
my
worries.
my
I'll
just
join.
yeah.
I'll join you on some criticisms, and it's kind of the same kind of thing that goes with other remakes. Is obviously they try to adapt the animal characters, but they obviously give them a realistic look and design, which just never allows them to express themselves in the same way
No,
the animated ones can.
they don't
Uh,
have a yeah, yeah.
I
The
did.
characters and the voice, and that's it.
I did like Sebastian, and to be fair, like he was the best effect in the film. The close ups on him, insane. Just he looked like a crab. Um, like you felt like you could reach out and touch him. Like he did look really good. Um, but oh my god, keep Flounder away from me. That scary motherfucker.
Poor Jacob Tremblay.
Scariest looking fish I've ever seen. Holy mo! Every time he popped his scary head out of the water, I was like, get off
Yeah,
the screen.
his shiny fish lips.
Nothing wrong with Jacob Tremblay's performance there. He's doing Flounder. It's
No,
great. But Jesus, get
Aqua
away.
Aquafina.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fine as
I
go.
I'm one of the very.
Interesting little. Sorry, you go.
I was about to say, the people who love this movie are moaning about one scene in this movie might have been one of my favorite scenes because
Is
of
it the rap? Is it
it's
the
the
clear?
scuttlebutt is
Yeah,
yeah
the clearly the Lin Manuel Miranda
yeah
addition
sure.
to the film. Yeah, that was fun. I
It was
didn't
just a
mind it.
weird whiplash, and I kind of like enjoyed. It woke me up out of my slumber
Yeah,
for a minute.
I didn't mind it at all. I was just like, okay, so Lin Manuel Miranda's involved in this, and then looked
Yeah,
at
well,
the end and he like
he
produced
writes the
everything.
song
And
for Eric as well, which I felt
was that
was
a
a
new
very
song? See, I didn't know that was a new song.
yeah, that song. Yeah, it didn't I kind of was starting to lose me at that point. I
He
thought that was a little bit hammy.
he didn't have the voice, and I think like, and again, that's something to go for. Halle Bailey being a musician, she has an incredible voice.
Oh
She's
yeah,
she's like blowing those songs out of the water, and apparently that's one of the reasons she got the role was she performed one of the songs and it practically reduced everybody who was in the casting room to tears.
yeah,
Um,
and they're really marketing
his
that
was heavily,
well
yeah,
with her like doing live performances at the Disneyland Castle, and she sounds exactly the same as she does in the
yeah.
soundtrack. So that's it's a good image. But yeah, you're right. I think
His was a
he's
bit auto-tuned, and you could tell, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying don't get rid of the guy. He put in an incredible
like
performance.
it's interesting that you didn't recognize that it was a new song, because I just feel like when you put those new Lin-Manuel Miranda moments in there, and you just, they're chalk and cheese compared to the original
Yeah, that
Menken and
one I
Ashman numbers.
that one I didn't recognize as a new song, but the Scuttlebutt one, I was like,
Yeah,
this is new.
this
And
is new.
they do like this crash zoom on the crab as he's doing, like, you know, he's got his hands like he's DJing or something.
Yes.
I was just like, oh my god, it made me chuckle actually. I don't know if that was the intention, but it did make me chuckle. So
yeah, I mean, again, you're turning me here, but no, I'm going to stick with my guns here. I came out. I was mostly bored for the experience. I think the thing that makes it like sort of an enjoyable experience is the stuff that they do new, that's new in here. I think the relationship between Ariel and Eric is good and as well fleshed out. The moments that were just paying tribute to the original film, I think, were just moments for me to go and stand by, because I knew I was watching a diminished version of an existing of something that's better. I could watch at home on Disney Plus. Exactly the same experience I had for Lion King. Luckily, you know, for the Lion King, that was the whole experience, and it wasn't like that here. So there were things to like. But yeah, I just think again, it's another one of the same. It's we're used to this.
They came. I think they got closer than most Disney films to having something interesting going on. And I think they, like you said, they casted really well. I was always kind of enthralled whenever Eric and Ariel were on screen. You know, the big fight at the end did nothing for me. I was quite bored during that.
Yes.
There was some good stuff. There was some poor decisions on lighting and stuff, but
I quite like the woman who played Vanessa. They use like the young the pretty version of Ursula that she kind of puts in there to you know, steal Eric away from Ariel. I think she was pretty good in the limited amount of scenes that she had, and she kind of chewed up the scenery.
Yeah, definitely. She got her time and was just like, well, I'm going to make the most of this for sure. So,
do you remember when Halle Bailey is lured into Ursula's cave at the beginning? Well, a third into the movie, and then you see in the corridor there's these like kind of little creatures trying to grab her.
Not the eels.
No, they were like all attached to the wall of the cave, and they were all like pulling on her, and she was like, "Oh, apologize for my friends." But that's
okay.
That's like a nod. That's a nod to the original film, where you were saying that what does Ursula do with these people? Like once she does these contracts, like it seems in this movie she just kills them, and they like just like what happens to Triton in this movie. He just like kind of fizzles and disappears. But what they do in the original movie is so much more scary. With, you know, she actually turns these people who can't fulfill their contracts into these little weaselly creatures that she keeps in her garden of like her garden. That's the poor unfortunate souls, and these little beings that are like perpetually living in a state of pain and are, you know, kind of miserable, and it's really horrible. It's a lot more effective and dark, and I remember as a kid being really scared of that. And yeah, I think they just could have made Ursula a little bit more scary here. I would have really appreciated that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I didn't have a clue with this one what the end result was. I've maybe got your voice, but then that didn't, like, she could still speak.
It was more,
that does. I think you're right. They definitely could have played into that a bit more.
I think kids are gonna love it. You know, I think you know, there's loads of kids in our screening and everything. I mean, they're all very well behaved. They all really seem to be enjoying it. So I think, you know, it's a safe bet for any parent to take their family out for the week. But yeah.
And everybody else who can't get over the fact that a black woman's playing Ariel, bugger off.
I second that.
They could have made her hair a bit more red, though. That was it.
Hair's amazing, though. I saw like you know, the scene where she whips her hair out of the water when she gains her legs. I've seen online like she even had to do like gym training for her neck just so that she could do that. And I was like, well, surely it's just lifting your head out of the water, but you forget that she's got these miles of dreadlocks on her. That you might imagine with like absorbing the water, the weight of that. She had to do about 15 takes of doing it, but she had a weight restraint where she had to do like neck ups basically in the gym so that she could do that scene. I thought it was amazing.
I did think about that moment in particular, actually, and it's funny that you bring that up about training and stuff, because as soon as she did it in the film, I did think like you'd have to be like head tipped forward slightly
Yeah,
as you're coming up out of the water, so that, and then to like whip your hair.
yeah.
Yeah, I did think that is like, yeah, there's a bit more to it than just like coming out of the water and whipping your hair. I mean, my hair's pretty long now. I'll give it a go next time I'm in the sea. I'm gonna try to do the Little
I
Mermaid.
don't think it even compares, man. I don't
Not
think so.
yet, but I just want to get an understanding as to how difficult that is.
Can I leave on one more bugbear? This is like a really nerdy one.
Go on.
Under the Sea, the music number Under the Sea. It's such a big pivotal moment in the movie, and I think they just kind of messed it up. I don't know. I don't know your memory of that scene. I just think it's okay. I think
It
like
doesn't have the colorful playfulness of the animated because they can't go as crazy with
it
it,
doesn't.
can they?
And also, what they sing, the lyrics in the original movie, the lyrics are an exact word play on the imagery on screen. So when you're singing in this movie about having a hot crustacean band, well, where is it?
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Like the standout, like from what I remember, obviously Under the Sea is the big standout song in the animated film. For
Yeah.
here, the big standout song is Part of That World, and it gets reprised like a couple of times. So like that's their main one they fall on.
It is the best song, definitely.
Yeah.
So
there we go. We spent a lot of time on Little Mermaid, more than I thought we would.
I think now this is where the time where all the viewers who came in for Little Mermaid switch off the podcast. No, it's been a while. We're going to go back into the BFI.
Yeah, we hit a bit of a moment where obviously Celine and Julie Go Boating was our last one, and that was 3 hours. We got Sátántangó coming up now, which is 7. And then the next film on the blind spot list is A Brighter Summer Day, which is 4 hours. So
is it 4? I thought it was 3.5.
No, it's 4 hours, and it actually might be 4 hours and 20 minutes. So.
Okay, depending on.
Yeah. I don't want to give away anything with that one, but it's worth it.
Okay. Okay, it kind of gives it away. Okay, well, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, sorry. All right, I'll take it away. Yeah, so trying to fit these very long films in has been more difficult. So that's why it's not been every week at the moment.
I think when you sign up for the list, you're like, oh, this is I'm gonna be chucking these out like nothing, and you don't realize till you look into the list that a good portion of these movies are epics, to say the least.
Yeah, we do have a short film coming up, but yeah, then later on, I think this is the second longest film. It's 7 hours. It's the second longest film in the list, with the longest one being I'm going to say it's pronounced Shoah, the 9-hour documentary on the Holocaust. So
okay,
that's a barrel of laughs for another day. It's gonna be yeah, that'll be interesting. I don't mean that in a weird way.
Keep going. I'm just gonna say nothing and just let you keep talking.
As in, it obviously wouldn't be a barrel of laughs. Okay, I'm not explaining the joke. I'm not explaining the joke.
It's okay. I think everybody knew you were sarcastic the first time. I think you just damned yourself further by going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, this is gonna get clipped in a certain out of context way soon.
Might not get clipped.
One listener's gonna clip it. Mom, stop. Okay, so let's get back on track to Sátántangó, 7-hour Hungarian film.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you try to summarize this movie. I'm gonna leave.
Yeah, 7 hours of kind of poverty, mud, farming,
rain, a lot
hopeless
of rain.
souls, lots of rain, wind, hopelessness and despair.
And I think it's worth.
And I don't think we're selling it because I don't think it's particularly a bad film. Anyway, so I'll just quickly summarize it as best I can, because to be honest, even though it's a 7-hour film, it's not 7 hours worth of stuff plot
No.
happens.
Well, it's actually, in terms, I think for the whole entire film, no, this tells you the pace of the movie straight away. That even though it's 7 hours, I think 7 hours and 21 minutes,
Mm,
it's got about 147 shots for the whole
yeah.
movie. So that tells
Yes.
you the pace of this thing.
Yeah. But all right, just briefly, Sátántangó. I'll just summarize. I'll summarize the plot. I'm just trying to find one which kind of summarize it well. It's about a small village in Hungary who deal with the effects of the fall of communism, and basically they. I don't even know how to explain it. They're selling their cattle. They're all going to have this money. They're worried one of them's going to run off with all the money, but at the same time, there is a villager who who the village thought was dead, who's not dead, and he's coming back. He's returned. Irimas.
Yeah, I thought it was Iramias.
Iramias, that's it. You've watched it a little bit more recently than I have, and he's like this very.
Well, compared to the rest of them, he's charismatic.
Yeah, compared to the rest of them, this very charismatic kind of guy who's a bit of a schemer and tries to persuade the villagers to form a new commune with him for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's the film. They kind of split off on their different ways at the end. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it's 140, 150 shots across the whole thing. So we're talking about very long shots here. That being said, thank God the shots aren't just still shots. Béla Tarr, the director, he does move the camera here. So some of those shots are very interesting. So it does mean that even though it's a slow film, things are still in motion and it captures you and it keeps you going. How did you watch the 7-hour film? Because I definitely didn't watch it in one.
I watched 2 hours of it of an evening, and then I watched the entire rest of the thing or late morning, afternoon after. So I did the second time I watched it, I did straight 5 hours of watching it.
Oof, yeah, bloody hell! I think I did 3.5 on the first go, and then on the second day I did a 3-hour session, and then
definitely better to watch during an afternoon. I think
maybe the final hour, so it might have been 3-3-1. But did watch it over the course of 2 days, which I was happy with because
pretty similar then.
I didn't want to, cut it up too much. But it is definitely a film that's very difficult to fit into a day. We're both full-time workers here.
I think basically how the human brain works, you cannot concentrate on something devotedly for 7.5 hours, no matter what it is. Your mind is one. So whenever I was watching it, I took coffee breaks. I came back. I read something. I recontextualized myself with what happened the hour or two before, and then maybe returned it. So within this session, so I think even though it's a 7-hour movie, it's a kind of a 10-hour movie because the extra kind of contextualizing that you're doing around the movie. I don't know if that experience was similar to you, or if you just straight up watched it.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely had time to think about it in the gaps. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, well, I think the movie does that itself. I think the whole point of the lingering shots and the time spent that Tarr puts into every sort of frame in this film is to give you those moments of breathing space to think about what's going on.
Yes, and from the research I've done, the book is very heavily descriptive, and it's a lot more kind of. I'm not sure if it's 100% POV. It's very experimental text apparently, but there's a lot more kind of what's going on in these guys' heads, and it's almost as if the film allows you to come up with that, because when you are swept over with these long shots where you're just kind of like lingering on a character, or watching them travel, or seeing them just live in their space, you kind of like start to think like, what might they be thinking, and how are they feeling and stuff like that. But it also really like encompasses you into that kind of like misery.
Yeah,
in like it sweeps you over. You feel like you're in the place. It's desolate.
No, you do
muddy and just grim most of the time. Sorry, Hungary, but I
It is
think the
grim, but
idea is that
that's
it
the
is supposed to be
idea.
grim. Yeah.
Yeah. We want to talk. I think this movie, whatever you're trying to clean from this movie, I think you don't try to be too literal with a film like this that is so thoughtful that Tar is putting on here. Everything here is laced with metaphor or themes, and I think a big thing that I kind of took out of this film was complacency, um, the secular nature of life and how we choose to kind of not move on, and how then somebody charismatic comes along and completely it's like the opening shot of the film is we get this 10-minute sort of shot of a herd of cows, and like you said, like you mentioned to me when we were talking about the movie privately, that it felt like Béla Tarr must have counted his lucky stars whenever he saw, what was actually happening on the field. There's a couple of bulls mounting some of the some of the cattle,
Couple of
and that is
randy cows
actually
in there.
it kind of sums up the movie, doesn't it? Kind of in terms of the Eremias relationship with the rest of the villagers and the workers.
Mm,
It's interesting if that was an original intention in the story or if
yeah.
he framed that afterwards. But yeah,
It's a great shot to establish just the location as well, because the camera moves,
mm, moves.
moves.
Yeah.
Oh god, there's a terrible joke there today. Moves through the kind of village with the cows, and you just see this barren landscape, and
Yeah.
just houses that just look
Yeah.
wrecked
Derelict.
and
And
derelict and unlived in.
yeah, that's
So
the thing. You really get the texture of this place. Even like sometimes the camera just like even focuses in on a wooden frame of a window, and you see it's all splintered and it's rotten, and there's a character peering out of it, and all they've got in their room is a small mirror that's like 2x2, and it's got a bottle of vodka in the corner, and life's not looking pretty great. There's no running water wherever they live, even though that they're
mm,
surrounded always constantly by water. They're they're wiping their asses with dishes on the floor, and it is a pretty miserable existence. I thought. So it kind of breaks it up into, was it 12 chapters, this story?
yeah, something like that. Let me have a
All kind
look.
of set within the period of a few weeks. Most of the story, until later on in the last couple of hours, is actually only set in the first, like, in 1 or 2 days, right?
Yes, it's 12. Yeah, and even like the first half, because I think the idea is that it is actually supposed to mimic a tango, like two steps forward, one step back, something like this.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't remember the exact
6 step. I think it's, yeah. It's the same thing. Yeah,
yeah, but a lot
exactly.
of the start is almost different perspectives on the same scene.
Yes.
And it's not until we have the death of a child, which happens about midway through the film, it kind of pivots and kicks off the second half of the film, which is maybe a little bit
The
more
flavor changes.
chronological.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more less uh, obsessed with a specific period of time.
Hmm. I'm just trying to think of a way. We can really sit here and we can describe what we saw, but I'm really trying to really like paint the picture for anyone listening who might not be familiar with the film at all. And it is fascinating. I think it really is a film. If you're really politically interested in Eastern European and how it responded to the fallout of the Cold War, and how attitudes or just how a people of a certain culture would have lived in the outskirts of a country, outside of its the political city centers, and how are
Mm,
those people affected? How would those people behave, and how would their lives would have looked? I think this movie would really interest you. I think that's what Béla Tarr really has in his mind. I think he's somebody who's really wrestling with his country, really.
mm,
Somebody who kind of loves his country but hates it at the same time. There's a really there's a false happiness and there's a misery in here. I think the big scene for me, if anything I took out of this film, was halfway through the film, just before the girl that we mentioned in question is killed. We can get into that as well. there's a dance scene in the local pub. The pub itself is like, you couldn't even call it a pub. It's a couple of bar stools, and it's a table at the end with a couple of bottles of drink behind the bar. It's terrible. It's just terrible. And what I found really, really interesting was it turns into this dance sequence, and there's an accordion player in the corner, and he's playing this repetitive tune over
a
and over
very,
and
very
over
drunken
again.
dance sequence.
Oh yeah, it's very interesting. It kind of reminded me whenever I was in school and we were studying, the build up to Nazi Germany in our A levels. I remember seeing paintings of what the Weimar Republic looked like, before the Nazis came into power, and how there was this sort of real like poverty, but everybody was forcing themselves to like live a bourgeoisie lifestyle. Everybody was trying to like, kind of put it on with a smile, but really struggling to do it at the same time. And that's exactly what that dancing kind of reminded me of. It reminded me of those old paintings I had seen from school where people are bashing into each other. There's loads of disdain and venom, but there's like an effort to try to emulate happiness at the same time. Even the song itself is like, it's trying to sound like a happy song, but it sounds nightmarish when it's looped over and over and over again. And Tarr pulls no punches. Like this thing goes on for 10 exact minutes, and you're watching the dexterity and the endurance of the actors, on screen, and it's kind of funny at the beginning, and then it just turns into a pure horror movie. I found that moment was really like, that's where the movie kind of made sense for me.
I think you've summed that up really, really well. It is an interesting scene, and it is kind of that chaos, and it is a crescendo towards this turning point, because that's where we have the girl kind of like, there's that scene is shown a few times with the young girl peering through the window. It's not until the morning after where they find out she's dead, and obviously the guilt and the kind of grief that comes with that changes the course and allows I can't remember the name of the guy again.
Eremias,
that's it.
I'll cut it.
It's all right. You can show my ignorance if you want.
I forgot to.
Eremias, that's where he gets to play on those feelings with like almost like a 10-minute monologue. Probably is a 10-minute monologue going by the scene's length.
He's very much like, he's like a false Jesus figure here, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got the beard and everything.
I mean, even on a physical level, but like he does look a bit like Jesus, or our conception of Jesus. But
he knows how to swindle them. But it's interesting because we're introduced to him through a scene where he's just being berated by like a police officer who's just calling him a loser. And so you have that idea of him as well, but then you get to watch him just kind of like use his, because he is a loser, really. You get to see how he kind of wins over these kind of very desperate people.
And the whole thing is, my interpretation was that it was the sort of military police that were making him an informant on the village.
Yes.
Okay. So it's kind of like showing the paranoia of the time period where the government wanted to know the ongoings of all the people that lived within the state. That's kind of like what his job is, and he's sort of the rat on these people. Okay, that just making sure I kind of got that right, because there's a lot of movie to deal with here, and that was the only kind of scene in the movie that kind of like brushed its intentions off quite quickly.
I will say this though, for 7 hours, it's not a boring film. Like, and I know it's got lots of shots of just people walking at times, but I was quite surprised by. Like, it has a plot. I was worried. I thought it would be more experimental than that, but it has a plot.
The dedication of all the actors is incredible.
It has drive. I don't think it warrants the length at all, and I do. Maybe this is an argument to get into later as we kind of summarize the film. But I do wonder if like the kind of this film's heralded as this amazing thing is maybe due to the ambition and its length rather than what's actually there, maybe. But let's get into a few other things before we summarize the film. Is it worth talking about the infamous cat scene?
Oh,
Because this is the film that like there's there was two moments that nearly brought me out for different reasons. Number one was the Doctor segment. I think it was like section 3. I think it was maybe the third hour, the
okay,
second and third hour. Found that really boring. Was
okay.
not into that.
Oh,
That was the only part of the film I was kind of bored. And then we move into the child scene, which I think or scenes is a really interesting segment of the film. It is really interesting, but it is a really difficult watch because she tortures and kills a cat, her own
mm,
cat.
yeah,
After, well, I guess the idea is that she's quite heavily bullied, and she's like one of 3 or 4 children in this village. They have no one else to go to, and everybody just kind of hates her and berates her
yes.
all the time.
And she
And
wants to move on to a life that is much better than the life that she's living on this hell on earth. So
yeah,
it's kind of a summary of the themes of the story, really.
yeah, she's incredibly bored and goes on this power trip, and yeah, it's a really difficult scene to watch because it looks very real. And from all reports, everything was above board. There was a vet here. The cat was sedated. It was taught how to play with the child through repetition, so they could have these kind of weird fight scenes. But that doesn't make it any less uncomfortable. And if you didn't know that, you'd be like, "Am I watching a cat being tortured to death right now?"
Well,
And even knowing that, there's an element of like,
I mean,
I
sure,
still don't feel very comfortable with this because the cat is, I think, clearly distressed at points. And obviously, you shouldn't maybe sedate a cat for these reasons.
I think, yeah, it's worth talking. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I think the same as you. It temporarily took me out of the film. Um, yeah, I read the interview with Tar that he made in 2001 about what actually happened in that scene and his protestation that, oh, I would never harm a cat. I've got 2 cats at home. Um, we had a vet on board, and the girl spent a couple of nights in the hotel roughhousing with the cat and learned teaching how to roll. That is baloney to me. I'm sorry, but like
You're
you
not
can't.
buying it.
Yeah, I'm not buying that. That cat is an unwilling participant, no matter what way you put it. I will say for the fact that what you see on screen is a murder. I think it's categorically not from what the claims are. I think it is just there was a vet on site and he or she did sedate the cat, but everything you see up until that point, there's 10 minutes of roughhousing with dust going off everywhere and she forces the cat's head to drink the rat poison. I mean, like
Yeah.
really grabbing it by its neck and forcing its head down. It clearly doesn't want to do it. She hangs it by the rafters in a mesh bag. I mean, come on. I mean, I just think
Yeah.
people are really like rationalizing their own morals here just so that they can enjoy a film and enjoy an auteur's piece of work. That stuff I just can't really get on board with. It's a shame because I think everything else surrounding the movie is really, really impactful, and there's some really good. I think it is a movie of moments. I think there is moments in this movie that I was bored. I'm sorry, it just
Oh
is the
yeah.
nature of the length.
Yeah.
But there are moments where I was zoned in and I was really brought in by the performance and the dedication to the takes and the lengths, and but it's just a shame. I think this scene was not required to tell the story of this girl and her downfall. To me, that a director would even conjure up a scene like this is a little bit troubling to me.
Well,
But
you got to remember, it is based on a book, so and it is quite a pivotal moment in the film.
okay,
I'm not saying, um, I'm not trying to justify the actions. I think there are ways to do it. Even in 1994, there are ways to show this or not show this. That doesn't actually use a real animal. So I'm not advocating that like
no,
the scene in its full glory should be there. But I don't know about taking away the whole thing because I think you know, I don't think it's play for laughs. Like, you are supposed to be distressed. If we were able to do it in a way that maybe made
a
uh,
bit more suggestive. Yeah,
a bit more suggestive, and you could still get the horror out of that. It's still a cat. Like, we're still attached to animals. as humans. Like you could still find ways to do that. But yeah, I'm not sure I'd take it out completely. Just maybe change the way I film it.
Yeah, or it's just how long it lingers. I think it just gets a little bit. You become a bit of an unwilling participant yourself there, and I think
Yeah.
I kind of worry for the girl in that scene herself, like kind of what that must be like later on contending. You know, she kind of just does it because she's 12 years old and is an actor. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but what I saw on screen, you know, kind of
It's not
looked.
nice.
It's not nice, but yeah, I'm not free from this too. You know, I kind of have a moral high ground suddenly on animal cruelty in film because I enjoy the Wild West genre, and I know that is riddled with the history of inhumane treatment of horses and how that's, you know, the legacy behind that. And we have our own little, you know, we have to kind of contend with what we can enjoy and what and why we're enjoying it, and is that worth the pain of others. But I think that's kind of art in general, and that's something that we'll be wrestling with forever. I think the rest of the film surrounding this is very fascinating. I think Tar has a really clear vision. I think it does. It's not as confusing as I was worried it was going to be. I did get what was going on. I did find moments really, really powerful. I mentioned the dancing, and you know, I think I'll be, you know, in a year's time that scene will be popping up in my head sporadically. You know, there's just something about it. But yeah, it's a one and done for me. I'm glad I saw it.
Yeah.
But and interesting, Tar really wants he exclaims that he wants everybody to go see it in one go. That you should see it in a theater without a break. I don't know if I could.
I think you'd come out of the cinema feeling like one of the villagers, just like just downtrodden, and just depressed.
You should do a secret cinema experience in Hungary, where you come out and it's exactly the same.
That being said, the showings that have happened, and I think there was one in Dublin just after we left. From our holiday, like they have 2 15-minute breaks. That's it, 2 15-minute breaks. I feel like you still need more than that. I like the way I watched it. I think across 2 days, I was able to let elements of it kind of like settle in my brain and have a think about it, because, you know, there's obviously a language barrier there are subtitles, but, you know, like you're picking up on history and culture and all kinds of things, so it takes a moment to take it all in. I'm glad I did it, and considering the length and the pace, it wasn't my least favorite film that we've watched out of this series. In fact, I enjoyed it more than quite a few that we've seen. I think they just had a bit more going for it at times. But yeah, I do think, like, would I be applauding this film if it was just like 2 hours, 2.5 hours? Is the kind of the accolades that it's, and the kind of reputation it's achieved, has it come from the ambition of being a ridiculously long film?
Mm-hmm. And being able to let those moments sit. If all those moments were still in the film in a 2-hour setting and woven together, would it have been as effective? I'd probably argue not. So it is an interesting film, and I think Tar does a really good job, at least, at letting you know early on in the film what you're going to be putting yourself in for, and he teaches you how to watch his movie in a way. It's funny that you didn't like the doctor chapter, because that actually was my favorite chapter.
Of course.
No, I know, not to be a contrarian. I just kind of really like zoned in on that performance. I think that was a really great performance by that actor. And some really great shots of. I thought it was a really good comment on the human body and how that relates to the position of the country and how it's kind of in its drunken state. I kind of like that. And watching this odyssey of this man who never leaves his house go out to try to desperately try to buy a bottle of fruit brandy was quite. I thought it was quite interesting.
And he's our narrator as well, isn't he? Like, he is the guy who documents all of this at the end of the day, and stays within the village.
I was so surprised because this movie came out in the early 90s, and I was like, that guy is on death's door. He does not look well. The actor didn't die till 2017. I was really surprised to read it.
There you go. Maybe it was makeup, Chris. Maybe
could have been. He did wear a big heavy coat. Yeah.
Yeah. Has this made you want to go out and watch Béla Tarr's other films, which are also apparently quite long, and he's very notorious for these very long takes. I can't say I'm gonna, even though I like this film, can't say I'm gonna go out my way to watch his other films. If they pop up at some point, then sure, I'll be like, the guy who did
But you're not going to go out of
Sátántangó.
your way to make yourself purposely miserable.
Yeah. But I must say, after watching this, anything that isn't 7 hours, I'm like, yeah, I could watch that.
I know, right? I'm like, you're telling me next film's Brighter Summer Day, 4 hours. It's a dawdle.
Do you know what? And yeah, it is, and it's good. Yeah, it is, yeah.
Okay, right. Say no more.
I'm trying not to. I want you to watch it because it's Edward Yang who we both watched Yi Yi, and I wasn't as keen on Yi Yi as you
I liked
were.
it a lot.
But I almost wish would I have liked Yi more if I'd watched this one first? I don't know. It is a very different film, and I think that's what I was surprised by. But yeah, anyway, that's for a future episode.
That's for another day. So what are we saying? What's the best movie of this week that we watched? I'm just interested. What would you recommend listeners to catch up with more?
Okay, well, I think Sátántangó is a better film than The Little Mermaid. But in terms of recommendations, it's difficult to recommend either, really.
Right.
If you've got kids, go watch Little Mermaid. It's great fun. And
I think you don't need to be recommended Little Mermaid. You're either going to go see it or you're not, right? You already know,
definitely.
You've already made your mind up.
Like, it's fun. It's a good little thing. If you are a connoisseur of film, if you want to tick off what is like a bit of a legendary long film in the canon, then it's worth checking out. It's 7 hours, but it's not 7 boring hours. It's
like the 15th longest film of all time or something like that.
Yeah. It's like it's 5 really interesting hours and 2 boring hours. I think that's the way to go. And if that was any other film that had that amount of boringness to it,
that actually is not bad.
It's not that bad.
It's not a bad ratio.
Yeah. It's not a bad ratio. But yeah, I mean, the length is giving it probably more credit than it's due. But it's a very good film. It's very good.
I did feel bad that like we have blistering beautiful sunshine out here at the minute, and I had to like give up a beautiful Saturday. Yeah. Like reading the book in the garden, or like just so I could watch a movie about mud and rain.
Yeah.
No,
so far. If BFI came to us in 2032 and said, Alex, Kris, famous podcasters from the film angle, can you give us your top 10 films for this year's Sight and Sound, or this decade's Sight and Sound? I don't think I'd put it on there.
What, you put The Little Mermaid instead?
No. I don't think I'd put Sátántangó on there. It wouldn't be part of my top 10, but I'm glad I saw it.
No, I think behind Tropical Malady, it's probably the film I enjoyed the least so far.
Yeah. Oh no, I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, I dislike Tropical Malady more. And Celine
that's what I mean. I think Tropical Malady was my least favorite, but
Celine and Julie felt longer than this film to me personally.
And that's the weird thing, because you're the French New Wave guy out of the two of us, and I liked it more.
We're revealing so many new things about ourselves. We're learning about ourselves. We're learning about each other through the series.
Oh, shut up!
It's great.
And shove it up your ass.
And everybody should keep listening. This is turning out to be a long episode where we only talk about 2 films. So we'll wrap it up there. I think it's been a good conversation, Kris. I'm glad we finally got around to it.
Me too. And hopefully we'll be back next week to discuss Brighter Summer Day and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I know. I'm glad I got it right that time, because it's so easy to go back to the first movie's title. They're so similar.
And it's like part 1 of 2, isn't it? Like,
I'm hearing that the movie does leave you on the cliffhanger, but I'm looking for it. But I'm hearing great things so far. Amazing things.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to catch up with Into the Spider-Verse as well.
I think it's worth it
before I see it, because I love that film. So that gives you a little, we're heading that way next week. rate us, review us where you can. It helps us out immensely. Leave us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple and all those kind of places. Share with your friends. Share with your mum. And
Share with your mum.
Share with your mum. And
specifically your mum.
And share with your Hungarian communist friends.
Yeah, there's a Hungarian guy in my classroom in secondary school. I mean, I might forward it. Just say nothing. Just a blank text. Just forward him the link.
Yeah. Like us on the TikToks and the Instagram, and we'll see you next week. This has been the Film Angle.
My name is Chris.
And I'm Alex.
See you later.